Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Susan, and thanks for running the Oregon Book Awards. I've been going to Oregon Book Awards ceremonies since before I even published a book, and it's just a wonderful way that you recognize and celebrate Oregon authors, and a great way to bring people together, and it's always an honor to be a finalist. So I really appreciate it. And thank you, students who showed up. It's a beautiful day out, hard to sit in front of your computer, I understand. So thank you for coming, I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna share my screen and share some slides with you. Can you guys see? You call this democracy and a picture of me in front of the Capitol? Yeah, everybody can see that?
Yes.
Good. Let's just tell a little bit about the background to kind of creating this book. So I'm the kid who went to Washington, D.C. in 8th grade as a part of a school trip. And when I was there, I was at the Capitol and I got to watch laws being debated. And I was so just kind of in awe of just how accessible democracy seemed to me then, and how I could see this process in action. I was so inspired that I went to the gift shop and I bought a portrait of John F. Kennedy, and I put it up on my bedroom wall. And I used to like lie in bed and look at this portrait and think like, well, what can I do for my country? And then fast forward to after college and grad school, I actually had an opportunity to work as a fellow in the US Senate. So instead of being up in the gallery watching, like I was part of helping lawmakers put together laws. And it was an amazing experience. And actually, I was really impressed at how much work there was, bipartisan work across the aisle on lots of different issues, and how sort of smart and dedicated everybody was. But I was also really disturbed by things that I saw that didn't really feel democratic, like that one senator could put a hold on a bill that was very popular and it would never even be brought up on the Senate floor. So, our elected representatives weren't even able to discuss or debate the bills. And then I also realized how much power, senators from states with very small population had so much power in the Senate that they could really overrule what most people wanted. And so instead of kind of following a path into public service, I left and became a writer, and was happy doing that. I've written 20 some odd books and 100 magazine articles. And then 2016 happened. And for the second time in my voting life, the person who won the popular vote did not take office. And that really got me thinking about what I could do for my country. And that was to really put together a book that would really look at the structures of our democracy, look at how democratic our structures are and what was working and what wasn't working, with a litmus test being how well does our government represent the will of the people. So I just want to start with actually just a question. What issues are you most passionate about? Because even though I'm talking about something really abstract like democracy, this is all about the issues. So is it climate change? Is it healthcare? Is it income inequality, or policing, or gun violence, or education, or the economy? The fact of the matter is that no matter what issue you care about, you have to care about how our democracy works. And I'm going to give you a couple examples to show that. So there's actually great agreement that Americans agree that we need to do more to support the poor. So roughly 2/3, 62 to 69%, say that government should spend more to support the poor, and more than 2/3 support a $15 an hour minimum wage. So this is hugely popular, and there was just a vote on it, and we can't seem to get those laws passed. Americans also agree that we need universal health care. So more than 2/3 of Americans, 69%, support a government health care plan similar to Medicare that would cover everyone, but we can't seem to get this law passed. Americans agree that we should do something about climate change. So 68% support raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations to combat climate change, but we can't seem to get that law passed. Americans also overwhelmingly support common gun sense laws. So more than 90%, so it's like the whole country, everybody in the country thinks that we should have background checks for all gun buyers with no loopholes. 85% want red flag laws that would keep guns away from violent or suicidal people, and that's including 78% of gun owners. Think about that. These are gun owners who want these laws, and yet we can't seem to get these laws passed. Americans also want police reform. 92% want police to wear body cameras. 83% want a ban on racial profiling. 82% want a ban on chokeholds, like the one that was used to kill George Floyd. But again, we can't seem to get these laws passed. So what I learned in working on this book is that the fundamental problem that we face is bigger than all of these problems combined. Our democracy does not reflect the will of the people. So here's a wonkish graph that kind of shows what I mean, and this is from the book. So this is a graph that shows what a responsive government looks like. So basically, if you look at the bottom corner, if 0% of Americans support a law, then it should have a 0% chance of passing because nobody wants it. If 100% of Americans support a law, then it should have about a 100% chance of passing. But we are very far from that ideal. So this is the sad reality. Researchers at Princeton University and Northwestern looked at polling of what Americans actually wanted in terms of policy and what laws actually passed over a 20-year period. And they found that most laws have about a 30% chance of passing, whether 0%, no Americans want it, or whether 100% of Americans want it. So there's something very wrong with our democracy. So in my book, what I do is I kind of break down the things that are skewing our democracy so that it doesn't reflect the will of the people. One is that we don't actually vote for president. We have this electoral college system that has given the presidency to the loser of the popular vote in 2 out of the last 6 elections. But it's even worse than that because it really distorts every election by putting all the focus on about 6 battleground states. So that means that people who are running for the presidency are talking about the issues that people in those 6 states care about. They have a policy platform to win votes in those states. They actually only visit those states. And there's even a link between like federal funding is higher in those battleground states. And so that renders citizens in 44 states in our country mere spectators in our election for president. We also have this strange thing where we let political parties choose voters. So there's a big census going on right now. And as part of that, states across the country are going to be redrawing their district maps. The problem is that voters in more than half of states, half of states live in districts where the state legislature, think about that, the politicians, the state legislatures can draw those voting district maps. So they can draw them for their own benefit. They can draw maps that will make sure that them and their buddies and their parties will remain in power. Oregon is one of these states that allows this practice, which is called gerrymandering. There's historically and even increasingly now efforts by states to block many people from voting and to make it very difficult for voters to vote. So first of all, there's a strange thing that we do in this country. We don't think it's strange because it's what we grew up with, but we make citizens register to vote. In most other Western democracies, it's the government's responsibility to have citizens register to vote. And so we have about 40 million citizens who are not registered in this country. And then there are also about half of states that put up all kinds of barriers to voting, like they have strict ID requirements that a lot of people don't have. They purge the list of voters and actually like kick people off the rolls who had registered. There's at least less and less because of COVID, less access to vote by mail, but it's hard to say whether that's going to be permanent. But there's also what some state politicians will do is they'll restrict the number of polling places around people who support their opponent. So they make it harder for people to vote. We also keep the vote from citizens, American citizens, simply because of where they live. So there are 42 million Americans who live in Washington, D.C. and in Puerto Rico. These are citizens, and they do not have full voting rights simply because of where they live. If they move, like I did, from D.C. to Virginia, you have more voting rights. If you move from Puerto Rico to Florida, you have more voting rights. We also disenfranchise citizens from our racist criminal justice system. So there are 4 million American citizens who can't vote because of a felony conviction. Once again, we think this is normal, but if you look at what happens across the world, most countries don't link their voting system to their criminal justice system. And it's even worse in this country because we put so many people in jail. But it's even worse than that. There are 3.3 million people who are not allowed to vote, and they're not even in prison anymore. So they served their sentence, and yet they're not allowed to vote. So my book is really about, that we can't really fix the problems facing our country until we fix our democracy. But there is some good news. There are people, ordinary people just like you, all across the country who are working to fix our democracy right now. So this is a picture of Katie Fahey. She was 26 years old when in 2016, and she was going to be hosting a Thanksgiving dinner. And her family is really divided in terms of political parties. And she thought there was going to be this huge brawl at the Thanksgiving table. And she had read about this thing called gerrymandering. And so she decided to bring up gerrymandering at her Thanksgiving table and said, in Michigan, we let politicians draw the voting district maps. That seems really weird. Who would want to work to change that? And she posted something on Facebook, and she and her family and her friends gathered signatures, and they got a measure onto the ballot, and they got it passed. They had to get 60% of the vote in order for it to pass, and they got it. And now Michigan, it's a commission of citizens who draw the voting district maps instead of the politicians drawing them. In the book, I also write about these great, feisty women in North Dakota. They call themselves the badass grandmas. One is a Democrat and one is a Republican. And they work together to pass anti-corruption laws in their state. And then people all across Florida, more than 60% of voters in Florida, passed a measure to restore voting to 1.4 million ex-felons in that state. So for every flaw that I cover in my book, there is a solution. And in every chapter, I give you very specific suggestions on how you can get involved and what you can do to make change in your state and in your country. So what I encourage you to do, it's really hard when you think about what should I care about? What should I work on? And I'm really passionate about climate change too. And so while I divert some attention to climate change, I also think it's really important to think broader and to work on these greater issues, because we can't fix these other problems until we fix what's ailing our democracy. So I really believe that together, Republicans and Democrats and independents can shape a democracy that truly reflects the will of the people. And I feel even more strongly now than when the book came out in March that this is what our country needs right now. So in addition to the book, I've created some other resources that I hope are helpful. So there's a whole website for the book that's called youcallthis.com. And it has a 50-state democracy report card. So you can look up Oregon and find out, how does Oregon run its elections? What needs to be fixed in Oregon? My son, who went to high school in Portland, is now in film school and came home because of the pandemic. So he and I collaborated and made a number of short films on these issues. So They're called Flash Course on Democracy. And we have one on the Electoral College, one on gerrymandering, one on voter turnout, and there's a fourth, which I can't remember. But anyway, they're sort of really fun, short, funny resources just to educate you about the issues in a really fun way. So I hope that you will take some time and not only learn about our democracy, you know, by reading my book or you know, reading the newspaper, frankly, but also, you know, take some steps to make some change. And thank you just for showing up today to hear the talk. Thanks so much.
Thanks.